My name is Kim Wazny. I am the clinic coordinator at First Step Methadone Clinic in Oshawa, which is downtown Oshawa, so we see a lot. And I have been there for almost 18 years. I started my life, I guess, in Pefferlaw, which is a really small little village, kind of outside of Sutton. And it was like I was kind of a tomboy. I played with my brother mostly, rode bikes, played with frogs, like I wasn't a typical girl, if you want to say that. But we moved to Lindsay when I was 8 because my dad had a nervous breakdown. He was a police officer, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenic. So we needed to move closer to my mom's family so that they could help us. My mom needed to get a job at that time. She was a stay-at-home mom, and so that's what happened. And then we lived in Lindsay. I grew up in Lindsay basically from 8 until I left when I was 18, 19. I finished high school because I had a child young. I was 16 and I had my son, my oldest son. But I knew it was important to finish school, so I finished high school, and I went into marketing business because I was good at it. Basically, it was easy and I was good at it, so I figured that was my way. But my son had a lot of health problems when he was little. I ended up having to give him injections daily. So I kind of found myself leaning that I wanted to go more towards healthcare and taking care of people. So after 2 years in marketing, I hated it, and I went to school to be a lab tech. And then from there, that's when I got hired at First Step, which was my first job as a lab tech, and I didn't really even know what it was. When I walked in there, I sat down and I had no idea what methadone was. I had no idea what Suboxone was. I had no idea that opioid addiction was a thing. I had no idea. The only thing that I think probably put me above everybody else is because I had such a history with mental health. So, and that's where I stayed because it was a good fit for me. I fell into it and it chose me because I didn't know anything about it. But I found that I had an affinity for, people who were suffering with mental health and addiction, an empathy I didn't even know that I had, but I did. And yeah, it's definitely not for everybody. There was times when there was violence within the clinic, but it never bothered me, and I was never afraid. And, I guess it comes from the fact that I know everybody has their own story, their own tale, and they don't know what's happening that point in their day. So sometimes they just need somebody to be like, hey, what's going on? Like, are you okay? And 9 times out of 10, it was just they were having a crap day and somebody rubbed them the wrong way.
So was the clinic like your first exposure to addiction, or did it come earlier in your life?
Well, alcohol addiction, I think probably, you grew up in a small town. My aunt and uncle, a couple of my aunts and uncles are alcoholics, or were. I guess they have passed since. But that's basically the only real exposure to addiction that I've ever had. But I know that my mom's dad was an alcoholic, and she went to Al-Anon when she was, I don't know, probably in her early 30s. And I never really knew why, but it was, now I do. It was because of, the trauma that she experienced from her father being an alcoholic. So, and she helped herself, which was great, but, not everybody does. So I guess that was probably my first experience with anything addiction. But then, yeah, like I said, I had no idea that opioid addiction was even a thing. Had no idea. There was and I will never forget this. I say boy because he was 18 when he came to us, which is so young to, and I know they probably started earlier than that, but we don't take anybody who's not an adult. But I was doing intake assessments and, seeing what their history was, etc. And he was so, he so didn't know what he was getting into. Like he's like, I just thought I had the flu. He had no idea what he was to be in withdrawal. He had no idea that the drugs he was taking was going to have this effect on him, that he would need to somehow come away from it and not know how to do that. And I was just like, that stuck with me. I don't know why, but that was a huge thing. He was so young and he just had no idea. And I think part of the reason why I stayed in this for so long is because people need to know this stuff. And I don't think, and that's also another reason why I'm trying to support you so much, because you're doing such amazing things and people need to know. Kids need to know. They need to know that this is real, this is a thing. And now more than ever, because fentanyl is killing so many people, it's crazy. So that has stuck with me like forever since that time. And that was probably, oh my goodness, probably 10 years ago at least. Yeah, we've lost a lot of people too. I mean, that always sticks with you. There was some people that you're closer to, you know, obviously I've gotten close to certain patients and more so than others. Sometimes we're the only family they have. So, you know, you get a little bit attached to them and stuff like that. So certainly there's that too. But, you know, they've had other illnesses or whatever, the struggles. But yeah, there's a few definitely that's stuck with me and probably will.
Burnout is a very real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion fatigue is a very real thing. And I mean, I've known you for a very long time and you've done a very good job at guarding against that cynicism since I've known you. And I wonder just what your thoughts are on how you go about preventing reaching points where it might be counterproductive to even continue in the field when you hit those low points.
Yeah, honestly, I've never really considered that. I'm extremely good at compartmentalizing. I don't know why I am, but even when I'm at the hospital, and if I have to go into the trauma blade to take blood or whatever on somebody, I can just do my thing. Like, I don't know. I've always been good at that. But yeah, like I mentioned, you know, some people that we've lost, that you go home with that. You know, you like to leave stuff at work, but it goes home with you. And I mean, I have a good support system, my husband and my kids and, you know, my friends. So I guess that's probably the main thing, is just that I have people that I can vent to or get it off my chest, and then I'm good. So I'm blessed that way. I know not everybody is, but for me, it's just my people, my close circle, my family. You know, like my brother is bipolar, and so he struggles with addiction also, but he's a good sounding board for me sometimes when I'm just, because I don't really want somebody to answer me. I just want to get it off my chest. And he's probably the best person for that, ironically, because, you know, he just is. I don't know. We've been close my whole life. So, yeah, which it could be another reason why I am so good with people with mental health issues.
But in your kind of just general collective experience, what's the most common thing that you see that like kind of preceded somebody being in active addiction?
Trauma is such a huge one. I mean, I know there are people that just like to, you know, escape and, you know, they get addicted and stuff like that, but it's almost always trauma. And it could be small trauma, it could be large trauma. It just depends on the person and how they perceived something. And how they're dealing with it. They're obviously not dealing with it is kind of the problem. But I think most people who are running using chemicals have experienced something to run from. So, I mean, who can really blame them?
Yeah, and particularly if you're in a sense of poverty, you're homeless. I mean, how would you expect to get somebody into a good place when they don't even know where they're going to be eating next or have a roof over their head?
And it's totally like a family affair too. You see your parents doing things and it's normal. I did an interview, I was doing counseling at a research company that we were working for. I don't know if you were around that time, but I was doing some counseling with some of the people that were involved in the study, and they were studying some IV drug. I don't remember what it was exactly. But anyways, part of the protocols of the research study was that they had to do counseling, and we had to try and transition them into a program. Of course, most of them weren't ready for that, which is fine. But one guy says to me, he had lost his mom through heroin use, and he's like, you'd think that would make me stop injecting. And I'm like, well, that's what you did with her, that you probably feel close to her when you did that. And he's like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. Because it's so enrooted in their everything, in their day, in their life. Just like, when I make my special spaghetti for my children, like they'll do that probably for their children. Like it's kind of the same, right? Like it's just how they grew up, and that's all they know. Tricky thing, people can't get over trauma. Some people, they'll never be able to get over it. And when you've never known anything different, how would you get past that? I don't know. So.
And I was just wondering if you could explain what harm reduction is and its place in supporting people in active addiction.
I don't think when I first started that I really understood the concept of harm reduction. I kind of thought that it was, opioid replacement therapy was a way to, get people to get off it. Like it was, so they didn't go into withdrawal, so they, could eventually get off it. But really, it's so much more than that. It's to help people not die in a roundabout way, because, if they're on a program receiving, safe opioids, then they might not get street opioids that are tainted, or, they might not have to go into withdrawal, or, there's so many things that you don't look at until you're involved with people that have suffered with trauma or whatever the case may be. They're kind of still looking to escape, but they can't afford to stay on them all the time, or they can't commit to getting better. And that's okay, because, they're still trying, and, there could be one day where they're ready. So that may happen. It may never happen, but it may happen. So, we try to be there still. When everybody goes off and wants to come back, we say, yep, no problem. We don't punish people for, using, that became way more clear to me, especially now with fentanyl being so strong and so deadly that, if you're on methadone or Suboxone or now Sublocade, you're protected against that. The chances of you dying lessen. And I actually have an example that I carry it with me. One of our patients, he had gone off and come back and gone off and come back, and he came back, and I didn't have a doctor in to see him. And I said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you today. Come back tomorrow, tomorrow morning. And unfortunately, he died that night. And I just felt so guilty. Even though there was nothing I could do, I felt so guilty because I couldn't help him get back to a safer place. So I appreciate the harm reduction factor a lot more now.
I remember when I was getting off the GO bus one day after my 2-trip bus to Oshawa to come to the clinic to get my carries. And I remember I bumped into you walking down Simcoe, and I remember saying to you something to the effect of I couldn't do your job. That's insane to me. It's a shit show kind of thing. And then I remember you just simply replied to me as there are people too. That stuck with me through my career to this point.
Really?
And it was probably the one biggest lesson of that flip, because one, I felt stupid about it when I thought about it, because I'm going there for the very same reason. So who the hell am I to be judging anybody? But it just stuck with me for that, and I've actually used that very line with somebody when I hear it kind of going on around me. And I found it was a very simple way to communicate with somebody without being rude about it.
Yeah.
But makes them think in a way. And I remember being on literally the first day in 5+ years I was on methadone. I tapered all the way down to 0.5 ml, and then I jumped off. That first day I jumped off, I had to go see Dr. Brooks and to say I'm okay. And I remember standing in line because I had one first appointment, and some lady came by and called me a fucking junkie. And I remember just looking at her, I didn't respond or anything like that, but I'm like, me doing this bike ride and everything like that, I'm like, that's my, you do you.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see.
Yeah.
Like, you think we're all pieces of like some morally deficient people. And so that said, I wanted to ask you about kind of what your thoughts, I mean, I'm sure you see it a lot in downtown Oshawa, just the stigma factor within harm reduction or addiction as a whole.
I mean, you see it everywhere. Even within the clinic, you see it. And it amazes me. Like, I have people come in and, looking for help to get off of usually like a prescription medication. And they'll say, I'm not like these people. I work. And I'm like, well, are you addicted to opioids? Then you're like everybody else here. Like, it amazes me. Like, I'm just like, what? Like, anyways. And they call, patients call each other crackheads or junkies or whatever. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get why that happens. I see it in the hospital. We were having a discussion about, the nurses. They like, most of them are lovely, but they don't really have a huge grasp on addiction and mental health. Some of them do, don't get me wrong. Some of them are amazing. I think it's just lack of education, to be honest. But I've heard them call patients crackheads, junkies. And I'm just like, oh my God. So it's hard to be in that position. In my clinic, I can, put people in their place, but like, in the hospital, it's different, right? Like, I'm a lab tech and they're the nurses and they have to do their thing. But I definitely shot a nurse a dirty look when she said that. But in saying that, I think it's everywhere, unfortunately, and it's lack of knowledge. So I'm super happy to help with this and happy that you're doing it, because I hope it gets out there and I hope that people can learn, because it's important. We need to do better to help people that have these issues, because they get, lost in the wayside. We have patients that have come in with complex mental health issues who are, homeless, and they're just not they just don't have the resources that they need to help them. And, I can only do so much, because, I mean, they still have to do their thing as an adult, but I don't know, we need to do better. The good thing is that I do have, another person there that if I get to that point where I'm just like livid, I can walk away and they can take over. And, the good thing about the fact that I've been there for so long is most of my patients know me anyway. Like, I'm probably more family to them than some of their family. So, they feel like they can talk to me, and if they're having a bad day. And like, actually this morning, one of my patients who I've known for a very long time, he had been waiting to leave his sample, and and I was doing some stuff because I was by myself today, and somebody came in after him, but came up to the counter first. So I put him in the bathroom, and I knew that he needed to leave a sample. So I said, come to the bathroom. And because he was just about to throw up his hands and be like, I was here first. And I'm like, were you just going to say what was here first? And he's like, ha. And I'm like, yeah, come on back. So, it's part of, I guess, knowing them is helpful too. Like, it helps de-escalate things when you can kind of kid around or whatever, I guess I kind of just let them say their piece first, because people get, like you said, people get mad. It escalates. If I'm trying to talk over top of them, or, whatever the case may be, I just let them say their piece, and then I'd be like, okay, so what do we need to do to fix this? Like, what's the matter? What's going on? Or, you need to leave. Whatever the case may be at that time, I just think it's just treating people properly, like they're people, and they have feelings and emotions, and just like I do, and just like everybody else does. It's just, unfortunately, the environment can cause tension and stress and whatever else. And they're no different than me if I was stressed out at the grocery store because the cashier was taking forever to put my groceries through. It gets stressful. You're just like, oh my God, why are they so slow? It's everybody gets frustrated. So you just got to take it with a grain of salt. It's generally not about the person that they're attacking. It's usually something else. You gotta talk about your trauma. You gotta deal with it. Because if you don't, it's gonna stay with you forever, and you gotta let it go. Obviously, that's easier said than done for every person on the planet. But there's ways. I had a patient who has been off for quite a long time, and he, I would say he probably started because of issues with his mom. But I had to give him shots, how we did, testosterone replacement therapy. So I used to give him shots all the time. And when I was giving him shots, we would talk about stuff, just life, family, and then he would talk to me about, his mom and stuff like that. And, she passed away probably, I don't know, maybe just before he got off the program, I would say. And he's like, I'm so glad that I dealt with that and that I had you to talk to about it, because once she died, I couldn't really deal with it. So he was able to get it off his chest to her before she died. So I don't know, I think just talk, if you can, whether through the doctor or through family or friends or the staff at the clinic or whatever the case may be, talk about it. Talk about your stuff. That's the biggest thing for success, in my opinion.
The other way, what advice would you give to somebody either entering or who's been in the field a lot?
Yeah, I've been so lucky. The doctors that we've had, and have had over the years have been amazing. There's a lot of other clinics out there that are just a prescription. You walk in and they just give you a new prescription, and they don't take the time to talk, to see what's going on with your life and, your ups, your downs, there's so many time, obviously you have people waiting, but I would say probably most of our doctors take the time to talk. If you want to talk to them, they will talk and help you through it. And I would say to any doctor that's doing this, talk to your patients, find out what's going on in their world, because sometimes you're the only person they have to talk to, in some cases. So that's what I would say if I was telling my doctors what to do. Hopefully the message is to just get the message out, that we need to do better, and we need to help people, and people need to know there's people out there that will help them too, and that these programs exist, or people that even just care exist, and I think that's the main goal.